stay quiet. Servant Omega sensed the danger before anyone else and saved the Lycan King at the ball. Before we continue with the story, tell us where you're watching from and how old you are. I hope you enjoy the story. Amara Blood Moon felt it before she heard it. A vibration that sang through her bones like a warning whispered by the moon itself. Her hands stilled over the silver tray she carried, champagne flutes catching the golden light of 1,000 candles that illuminated the grand ballroom of the Stormborn Palace. Around her, nobility laughed and danced, their silk gowns rustling like autumn leaves, their jewels glittering like captured stars. But beneath the music, beneath the false pleasantries and political smiles, something darker stirred. She was nothing here. An Omega servant dressed in plain gray, invisible among the opulence. Her white skin seemed to glow pale against the muted fabric, and her long blonde hair was pulled back severely, as was expected of her station. Omegas were meant to serve, to fade into the background, to be seen but never truly noticed. Yet tonight, every instinct in her body screamed that she must be noticed, that silence would cost more than her life was worth. At the center of the ballroom, Nikolai Stormborn stood like a dark god among mortals. The Lycan King was a vision of controlled power, his tall, muscular frame draped in midnight silk and silver embroidery that caught the light with every movement. His long black hair fell past his shoulders, framing a face carved from stone and shadow, beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. He wore no crown tonight, needing no symbol to declare his authority. It radiated from him like heat from a forge, and even the boldest nobles kept a respectful distance, circling him like moths afraid to fly too close to the flame. Amara had served in the palace for 3 years, and in all that time, she had never dared look directly at him. To meet the eyes of the Lycan King was to invite death or worse. But she had watched him from the corners of her vision, had felt the weight of his presence like a physical force that made her heart race and her breath catch. There were rumors about him, whispers shared in the servants' quarters after the candles were blown out. They said he was ruthless in battle, that he had torn apart entire armies with his bare hands when the moon sang in his blood. They said he had never taken a mate, that his heart was as cold as winter stone. They said many things, but Amara had seen moments that contradicted the stories. She had watched him pause to help an elderly servant who had stumbled with a heavy load. She had seen him kneel to speak with a child who had wandered lost through the palace corridors. These moments were brief, quickly hidden behind the mask of the fearsome king, but she had collected them like precious coins, storing them away in her heart. The vibration came again, stronger this time. Amara's eyes darted to the upper gallery where musicians played, then to the massive windows that overlooked the moonlit gardens, then to the servers moving through the crowd with trays of wine and delicacies. Something was wrong. The scent in the air had changed, turned acrid beneath the perfume and flowers. Her Omega senses, often dismissed as weakness by the alphas and betas who ruled, suddenly became her greatest strength. She set down her tray with trembling hands and began to move through the crowd, her gray dress a whisper against marble floors. Nobles stepped aside without looking at her, as if she were merely another shadow cast by the chandeliers. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but she forced herself to breathe slowly, to think clearly. Where was the danger coming from? What had changed in the room? Then she saw it. A server she did not recognize, moving with purpose toward the king. His uniform was correct, his posture unremarkable, but the way he carried his tray was wrong, too rigid, too focused, and beneath his sleeve, just visible for a heartbeat, the glint of silver that was not decorative. Silver. Poisoned, perhaps, or blessed with dark magic. The one substance that could truly harm a Lycan, that could slip past their supernatural healing and strike at the heart. Amara did not think. She simply moved. Years of being invisible had taught her how to slip through crowds like water, how to be everywhere and nowhere. She closed the distance between herself and the false server in seconds, her mind racing ahead to calculate angles and timing. She could not cry out. A warning would alert him, would give him time to strike or flee or worse, to harm others in his panic. She had to be swift, had to be sure. The false server raised his tray, and beneath the crystal glasses, Amara saw the blade, slender and deadly, coated with something that shimmered with an unnatural light. He was 3 steps from the king. 2 steps. 1. Amara collided with him at full force, her small frame hitting his center of gravity with surprising strength. The tray flew from his hands, glasses shattering like stars against the marble floor. The blade skittered away, and in the sudden chaos, she heard his sharp intake of breath, felt his hand reach for another weapon hidden at his belt. The music stopped. The ballroom fell silent, hundreds of eyes turning toward the commotion. Amara found herself on the floor, her gray dress torn at the shoulder, her carefully pinned hair falling loose around her face in golden waves. The false server scrambled to his feet, and in his hand, she saw the flash of another blade, this one already drawn and aimed at her throat. Then Nikolai Stormborn was there. The king moved with a speed that defied nature, crossing the distance between them in the space of a heartbeat. His hand caught the attacker's wrist, and Amara heard the sharp crack of breaking bone. The blade fell harmlessly to the floor. With his other hand, Nikolai lifted the man by his throat, holding him suspended in the air as if he weighed nothing at all. The king's eyes had changed, gleaming with an inner light that was both beautiful and terrible. His voice, when he spoke, was soft as velvet and sharp as a blade's edge. "Stay quiet." The command was not for the attacker, who could not have spoken even if he wished. It was for the crowd, for the nobles who had begun to murmur and panic. At his words, silence fell absolute, and even the chandeliers seemed to stop their trembling. Nikolai turned his head, and for the first time in 3 years, Amara met his eyes directly. The world stopped. She had expected rage, perhaps, or cold calculation. What she saw instead made her breath catch in her throat. His gaze moved over her like a physical touch, taking in her torn dress, her disheveled hair, the small cut on her cheek where a piece of broken glass had grazed her. Something flickered in those dark eyes, something that looked almost like pain. "You are hurt." His voice had changed, gentled in a way that made her heart stutter. He released the attacker, letting him fall into the hands of guards who had materialized from the shadows, and in 2 strides he was kneeling beside her. The Lycan King, terror of armies and ruler of kingdoms, knelt on the marble floor and reached out his hand. Amara stared at that hand, strong and scarred and steady, offered to her as if she were a queen and not a servant. She felt tears prick at her eyes, felt something break open in her chest that she had kept locked away for so long. "I am sorry, my king." Her voice came out barely above a whisper. "I should have cried out. I should have warned you properly. I only thought to stop him before." "Hush." His hand closed around hers, and warmth flooded through her, chasing away the cold terror that had gripped her moments before. He helped her to her feet, with a gentleness that contradicted every story told about him. And when she swayed slightly, his other hand came to her waist, steadying her. "You saved my life." His voice carried through the silent ballroom, ensuring every noble present would hear. "This Omega saw danger where none of my guards did. She acted with courage that would shame most of my warriors." Amara felt the weight of hundreds of stares, felt the shift in the air as the nobles reassessed her, as she transformed in their eyes from invisible servant to something else entirely. But she could not look away from Nikolai, from the intensity in his gaze that made her feel as if they were alone in the room despite the crowd. "What is your name?" "Amara Bloodmoon." "My king." "Amara." He repeated it slowly, as if tasting each syllable. "You will come with me. I would hear how you sense this threat." It was not a request, but neither was it a command tinged with cruelty. He released her waist, but kept her hand in his, and as he turned to lead her from the ballroom, Amara caught a glimpse of his expression. The mask had slipped, just for a moment, and what she saw beneath took her breath away. Concern, wonder, and something else that made her pulse race and her skin flush warm. The walk through the palace corridors passed in a blur. Guards flanked them at a respectful distance, but Nikolai did not release her hand. His thumb moved absently over her knuckles, a gesture so unconscious and gentle that Amara wondered if he even realized he was doing it. They climbed a grand staircase, passed through halls hung with tapestries depicting ancient battles and long-dead kings, until finally they reached a set of double doors, carved with images of wolves running beneath a full moon. His private chambers. Amara's heart hammered as the doors swung open, revealing a room that was both austere and beautiful. Stone walls were softened by rich fabrics in deep blues and silvers. A fireplace dominated one wall, flames dancing within it, casting warm light across furniture that was elegant but not ostentatious. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the palace gardens, and through them, the moon hung heavy and bright, painting everything in silver light. Nikolai released her hand and moved to a cabinet, returning with clean cloth and a bowl of water that gleamed in the firelight. He gestured to a chair near the hearth, and when she hesitated, his voice gentled again. "Please, sit." Amara lowered herself into the chair, hyper-aware of how out of place she must look in her torn gray dress, with her hair wild around her shoulders. Nikolai knelt before her again, and she realized with a start that he seemed to prefer being at her level, that he chose to lower himself rather than loom above her. He dipped the cloth in water and brought it to her cheek with a care that made her throat tight. The touch was feather-light as he cleaned the small cut, his brow furrowed in concentration. This close, she could see details she had never noticed before. The way his long black hair caught hints of blue in certain lights, the small scar that cut through his left eyebrow, the fullness of his lips that seemed at odds with the hard angles of his face. "How did you know?" His voice was quiet, meant only for her. The guards saw nothing. The nobles noticed nothing. But you, an Omega who should have been invisible in that crowd, you sensed the danger. How? Amara swallowed hard, trying to find words for instincts she barely understood herself. "I felt it, my king. A change in the air. A vibration that sang wrong. We Omegas are taught that our senses are weak, that we are lesser because we cannot dominate and command. But perhaps there is strength in noticing what others overlook, in feeling what the powerful dismiss." Nikolai's hand stilled, the cloth pressed gently against her cheek. His eyes met hers, and in them she saw something that looked like recognition, as if she had spoken a truth he had been searching for but could never name. "They call me fearsome." His voice was barely above a whisper now, intimate in the firelit quiet. "They say I am cold and cruel, that I rule through terror alone. And I have let them believe this because fear is a useful weapon, because a reputation for ruthlessness keeps enemies at bay and prevents challenges to my throne. But the truth, Amara Bloodmoon, is that I am tired. Tired of the masks, tired of the pretense, tired of being surrounded by people who see only what they expect to see." He lowered the cloth, his hand coming to rest on the arm of her chair, bracketing her in without caging her. "You saw a threat where no one else did. But what else do you see when you look at me?" The question hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Amara knew she should look away, should remember her place, should offer some safe platitude. But the words that came out were pure truth. "I see a man who carries the weight of a kingdom on his shoulders and allows no one to help bear the load. I see someone who is gentle with the weak and fierce with the strong, who protects those who cannot protect themselves even when it costs him personally. I see loneliness that matches my own." The last words slipped out before she could stop them, and she felt her cheeks flush with heat. But Nikolai did not pull away. Instead, he leaned closer, and she caught his scent, pine and night air, and something wild that called to something equally wild in her blood. "Tell me about your loneliness." It was not a command. It was a request, genuine and open, from one isolated soul to another. Amara found herself speaking, words flowing out that she had never shared with anyone. "I have been a servant since my parents died when I was 14. Omegas are invisible unless we are useful, and even then, we are expected to serve and disappear. I have listened to hundreds of conversations without being part of them, have witnessed joy and sorrow and love and hate from the outside, always looking in. I have wondered what it would feel like to be seen, truly seen, by someone who looked at me and understood what they found. She paused, then added softly, I have watched you for 3 years, my king, from the corners of rooms and the edges of corridors, and I have wondered if beneath the crown and the legend, you felt the same. Silence stretched between them, broken only by the crackle of the fire. Then Nikolai reached up and took her hand again, this time bringing it to his chest, pressing her palm against his heart. She felt the strong, steady rhythm beneath her fingers, felt the warmth of him through his silk shirt. I have been alone for so long that I had forgotten what it felt like to want someone to see me. His voice was rough with emotion. I have had lovers who wanted the king, nobles who wanted the power I represent, warriors who wanted the glory of serving me. But no one has ever looked at me and seen the man beneath. No one until tonight, until you threw yourself in front of a blade meant for me, until you met my eyes and showed me your truth. His other hand came up to cup her face, his touch reverent, and Amara felt her breath catch. I do not know what this is between us, Amara. I do not know if it is fate or chance or the moon's design, but I know that when I saw you on that floor, saw that man raise his blade to strike you, something in me broke and reformed all at once. The thought of losing you before I even knew your name was unbearable. My king, she whispered, but he shook his head. Nikolai, when we are alone, I am simply Nikolai. No titles, no thrones, no masks. Just a man who is asking you to give him a chance to know you, to be known by you in return. Tears slipped down Amara's cheeks, and he caught them with his thumbs, wiping them away with infinite gentleness. I am an Omega servant. You are the Lycan king. The distance between us is nothing. He interrupted, his voice fierce now, carrying an edge of the command that made armies tremble. I do not care about station or tradition or what others will say. You saved my life tonight, yes, but you did something far more important. You reminded me what it feels like to hope, to want, to feel something other than duty and obligation. He leaned his forehead against hers, and Amara closed her eyes, breathing him in, feeling the solid reality of him against her. Stay. His voice broke on the word. Stay here tonight. Not as a servant, not out of obligation, but because you choose to. Let me know you, Amara Bloodmoon. Let me show you that not all of us are blind to what matters most. She should say no. Should remember propriety and protocol and all the reasons why this was impossible. But when she opened her eyes and met his gaze, saw the vulnerability there that he showed to no one else, she knew her answer. Yes, the word was barely a breath, but it was enough. Nikolai smiled, and the expression transformed his face, chased away the harsh lines, and revealed a beauty that had nothing to do with fear, and everything to do with joy. He rose and offered his hand once more, and when she took it, he drew her to her feet and into his arms. The embrace was gentle but secure, his chin resting atop her head, his hand stroking slowly through her loose blonde hair. You are shaking. His voice rumbled through his chest, vibrating against her. Are you afraid of me? No. Amara pressed closer, her hands fisting in his shirt. I am afraid of what I feel, afraid that this is a dream, and I will wake alone in the servants' quarters, afraid that the sun will rise, and everything will return to what it was before. Nikolai pulled back just enough to look down at her, and the intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. Then let me make you a promise, Amara Bloodmoon. When the sun rises, I will still be here, and so will you. This is not a dream, and I will not let you disappear back into the shadows. You have been invisible for too long, and I intend to spend every day proving to you that you deserve to be seen, cherished, and protected. His hand came up to cup her face again, his thumb tracing the line of her jaw with a tenderness that brought fresh tears to her eyes. I know this is sudden. I know we should take time, should be cautious and sensible. But I have spent my entire life being cautious and sensible, doing what was expected rather than what I wanted. For once, just once, I want to follow my heart, rather than my duty. And my heart is telling me that you are meant to be here, that this moment is the moon's gift to both of us. Amara reached up and covered his hand with hers, turning her face to press a kiss to his palm. Then I will stay. Not because you command it, but because I choose you, Nikolai. I choose this moment, this chance, this impossible beautiful thing between us. The smile that broke across his face was radiant, and when he lowered his head to kiss her, it was with a reverence that made her heart ache. His lips were soft against hers, questioning rather than demanding, giving her every opportunity to pull away. But Amara did not pull away. Instead, she rose on her toes and kissed him back, pouring 3 years of silent longing into that contact, feeling him respond with equal fervor. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Nikolai rested his forehead against hers once more. I will not rush you. His voice was rough, strained. You have my word. We will take this as slowly as you need. We'll build this foundation properly. But know this, Amara. From this moment forward, you are under my protection. Any who seek to harm you will answer to me, and I promise you, my wrath is not a gentle thing. The fierce edge in his voice, the promise of violence on her behalf, should have frightened her. Instead, it made her feel safe in a way she had never experienced before. This man, this powerful, fearsome king, would defend her against the world. And yet with her, he was gentle as moonlight, tender as spring rain. Come. He took her hand and led her to the windows, pulling her into his embrace once more as they looked out over the moonlit gardens. Sit with me. Talk with me. Tell me everything, Amara. Tell me your dreams and your fears, your memories and your hopes. I want to know all of you. And so she did. They sank onto a cushioned bench before the windows, and Amara found herself talking as she had never talked before. She told him about her parents, about the illness that had taken them when she was young. She spoke of her years in the palace, of the small kindnesses she had witnessed, and the casual cruelties. She shared her love of the gardens in early morning, when mist hung low, and the flowers were just opening to greet the sun. She confessed her habit of watching the moon from her small window in the servants' quarters, feeling a connection to it that she could not explain. Nikolai listened without interruption, his hand moving slowly through her hair, his presence solid and warm beside her. When she finally fell silent, he spoke of his own loneliness, of the burden of a crown taken too young when his father died in battle. He told her of the constant weight of expectation, of decisions that meant life or death for hundreds, of nights spent staring at maps and reports while longing for a single moment of peace. I built walls around myself, he said quietly. Made myself fearsome so that no one would see the uncertainty beneath. I thought if I could be strong enough, ruthless enough, I could protect my people and my kingdom. But somewhere along the way, I forgot how to be simply myself. I forgot that strength can come wrapped in gentleness, that power does not require cruelty. His hand cupped her face, tilting it up to meet his gaze. You reminded me of that tonight. When you threw yourself between me and that blade, you showed me a courage that had nothing to do with physical strength. You showed me that true bravery is acting despite fear, protecting others even when it costs you everything. I did not think, Amara admitted. I only knew that I could not let him hurt you. The thought was unbearable. Nikolai's expression softened further, and he leaned down to press a gentle kiss to her forehead. Fate works in mysterious ways. Perhaps the moon brought you to me tonight. Perhaps this was always meant to happen, and we were simply waiting for the right moment to find each other. They sat together as the night deepened, talking and falling silent by turns, learning the rhythm of each other's breathing and the comfort of shared presence. At some point, Amara's eyes grew heavy, and she found herself leaning into Nikolai's warmth, her head resting on his shoulder. His arm came around her, holding her securely, and she felt his lips brush the top of her head. Sleep, little moon. His voice was a low rumble, soothing and safe. I will watch over you tonight, and every night hereafter, if you will let me. Amara's last thought before sleep claimed her was that she had finally found the place she belonged, wrapped in the arms of a king who saw her as she truly was. Morning came gently, sunlight streaming through the windows and painting the room in gold. Amara woke slowly, awareness returning in stages. She was warm, comfortable, held in an embrace that felt like home. For a moment she kept her eyes closed, afraid that opening them would shatter the dream. "Open your eyes, Amara." Nikolai's voice was soft, laced with amusement. "I promise you, I am still here." She opened her eyes to find him watching her, with an expression so tender it made her heart ache. His long black hair was slightly mussed, falling around his face in a way that made him look younger, more approachable. He had removed his formal jacket sometime during the night, and in the morning light, wearing only his white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, he looked less like a fearsome king, and more like a man who had found something precious. "Good morning," she whispered, suddenly shy. "Good morning, little moon." His hand came up to brush hair from her face. "How did you sleep?" "Better than I have in years," she admitted, then bit her lip. "Nikolai, about last night." "What happens now?" "The court will have questions. Your advisors will protest. An Omega servant and the Lycan King, let them protest." His voice carried an edge of steel now, the king rising to the surface. "I told you last night that I do not care about station or tradition. You are not going back to the servants' quarters, Amara. You are staying here, with me." "But, no buts." He sat up, pulling her with him, his hands on her shoulders as he looked into her eyes. "Listen to me carefully. I have spent my entire life doing what was expected, making choices based on duty and politics rather than desire. I have been alone in the name of strength, have denied myself connections in the name of authority. But last night, I made a choice for myself. I chose you, Amara, and I will not unmake that choice simply because it is inconvenient or unconventional." His hand moved to cup her face, his thumb stroking her cheek with infinite gentleness. "I am the Lycan King. My word is law in this kingdom, and I say that you belong here, at my side. Anyone who disagrees can take their concerns to me directly, and I promise you, they will not enjoy that conversation." The fierce protectiveness in his voice made her shiver, but not with fear. She placed her hand over his, leaning into his touch. "You would defy your entire court for me? I would burn the court to the ground if it meant keeping you safe." His voice was utterly serious. "You think I speak metaphorically, but I do not. You are mine to protect now, Amara, and I take my responsibilities seriously. Any who seek to harm you or drive you away will learn exactly why I am called fearsome. The declaration should have been possessive, domineering. Instead, it felt like a promise, like the strongest vow a man could make." Amara felt tears prick at her eyes, felt her heart expand with an emotion she was afraid to name. "I do not know what I did to deserve you." Nikolai's expression softened, and he pressed his forehead to hers. "You were brave when you should have been afraid. You were kind when you had every reason to be bitter. You saw me when I was invisible in plain sight. That is more than enough, little moon, more than I ever dreamed of finding." A knock at the door interrupted them, sharp and urgent. Nikolai's expression shifted, the gentle lover transforming into the commanding king in an instant. He rose smoothly, every inch of him radiating authority as he called out, "Enter." The door opened to reveal Dmitri, the king's chief advisor, a tall man with graying hair and a face etched with concern. His eyes flickered to Amara, still seated on the bench in her torn gray dress, her hair loose around her shoulders, and his expression tightened. "My king, there are matters we must discuss. The assassin from last night has been interrogated. He was sent by Lord Ravencroft, who believed that with you dead, he could claim the throne through his distant bloodline." Dimitri's gaze moved pointedly to Amara again. "There are also questions about the Omega who disrupted the ball. Some on the council believe she may have been involved in the plot." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Nikolai's eyes flashed with that inner light, his voice becoming soft and dangerous. "Choose your next words very carefully, Dmitri. That Omega has a name. Her name is Amara Bloodmoon, and she saved my life last night while my guards stood blind and useless. Anyone who questions her loyalty questions my judgment, and I assure you, that is not a position they wish to be in." Dmitri paled, but stood his ground. "My king, I meant no disrespect, but the council will demand answers." and Omega suddenly elevated to whatever position she now holds, it will cause unrest. There are protocols, traditions. Protocols and traditions serve the throne, Dmitri. The throne does not serve them. Nikolai's voice could have cut glass. Amara Bloodmoon is under my personal protection. She will reside in the royal quarters. She will be given access and authority befitting one who saved the king's life. And if the council takes issue with this, they are welcome to raise their concerns directly with me. I promise them a hearing they will not forget. The threat in his voice was unmistakable. Dmitri bowed stiffly. As you command, my king, I will inform the council. Though I must warn you, there will be resistance. Perhaps if you gave them time to adjust, allowed the girl to return to her duties for a while until... No. The single word rang through the chamber like a bell. Nikolai crossed the room in 3 strides, and though he did not touch Dmitri, his presence alone made the older man step back. Amara stays. This is not a negotiation, not a suggestion, not a temporary arrangement. She is mine, and I am hers. And that is the end of the discussion. Now go inform the council, and make sure they understand that I will tolerate no challenges to this decision. If Lord Ravencroft thought to use my death to claim power, let this be a lesson. I am not so easily removed, and those I protect are untouchable. Dmitri bowed again, lower this time, and backed from the room. When the door closed, Nikolai stood still for a moment, his shoulders tight with tension. Then Amara was there, her hand on his arm, her touch gentle. Nikolai. He turned to her, and she saw the conflict in his eyes, the king warring with the man. They will make your life difficult, he said quietly. The nobles will gossip, the council will scheme, and there will be those who see you as an obstacle to their own ambitions. I can protect you from physical harm, but I cannot shield you from their words, their judgment, their cruelty. Amara reached up and cupped his face, making him meet her eyes. I have been invisible my entire life, dismissed and overlooked and considered worthless because of what I am. If the price of being seen by you is enduring the hatred of others, then I will pay it gladly. I am stronger than I look, Nikolai. I have survived things that would have broken others. I can survive this. His hands came to her waist, pulling her close. You should not have to merely survive. You should be celebrated, honored, cherished. Then cherish me, she whispered. Love me as you promised, and let that be enough to weather whatever storms may come. I do not need the approval of the court, Nikolai. I only need you. Something in him seemed to break at those words, the last of his control crumbling. He pulled her hard against him, his arms wrapping around her as if he could shield her from the world through sheer force of will. His face buried in her hair, and she felt him trembling. I do not know how to do this. His voice was muffled, raw with vulnerability. I know how to be a king, how to lead armies and make difficult choices, but I do not know how to love someone without destroying them in the process. I am afraid, Amara. Afraid that my world will consume you, that I will lose you to the very thing I swore to protect you from. Amara held him tighter, her hands moving soothingly over his back. Then we will learn together. We will make mistakes and find our way through them. You do not have to be perfect, Nikolai. You only have to be honest with me, to let me stand beside you rather than behind you. I am not fragile, and I will not break simply because your life is complicated. She pulled back enough to look up at him, to let him see the determination in her eyes. You asked me to choose you last night. Now I ask you to choose me in return. Choose to trust that I am strong enough for this, that we are strong enough together. Choose to believe that fate brought us together for a reason, and that no amount of council resistance or noble disapproval can change what we are to each other. Nikolai stared down at her for a long moment, and then slowly, he began to smile. It started small, a quirk of his lips, then grew into something radiant that transformed his entire face. You are extraordinary, Amara Bloodmoon. Completely, impossibly extraordinary. He lowered his head and kissed her, and this time there was nothing hesitant about it. It was a claiming, a promise, a declaration that spoke louder than any words. Amara kissed him back with equal fervor, pouring all her conviction and hope and determination into that contact, showing him that she meant every word. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Nikolai rested his forehead against hers. "Very well. We will face this together. But first we need to get you out of that torn dress and into something befitting your new station. You are no longer a servant, Amara. You are—" He paused, searching for the right word. "You are my chosen. My companion, my partner, my equal in all things that matter. And you will be dressed accordingly." Amara laughed, the sound bright and free, and in that moment, she felt something shift inside her. The girl who had spent years invisible and overlooked was gone. In her place stood a woman who had caught the heart of a king, who had proven her worth through courage and instinct, who had been seen and chosen and claimed. Whatever came next, she would face it with her head held high. The days that followed were a whirlwind of change. True to his word, Nikolai installed Amara in chambers adjacent to his own, rooms that were larger than the entire servants' quarters she had shared with 24 others. He assigned her personal guards, much to her embarrassment, and insisted she be fitted for an entirely new wardrobe. The seamstresses who came to measure her were professional, but Amara caught their exchanged glances, heard the whispers when they thought she could not hear. The entire palace was buzzing with gossip. The Omega who saved the king, the servant who caught his eye. Speculation ran wild about what exactly had happened that night after the ball, and Amara found herself the subject of stares and whispers wherever she went. Some of the attention was curious, even friendly. The younger servants, particularly the other Omegas, looked at her with something like hope, as if her elevation suggested that perhaps they too could be more than they had been told. But others watched her with barely concealed hostility. The noble ladies who had been positioning their daughters for the king's attention now viewed her as an interloper, a threat to their carefully laid plans, and the council, as Dmitri had warned, was not pleased. Amara learned of their displeasure when Nikolai took her to her first council meeting. She had protested, insisting that she had no place in matters of state, but he had been adamant. "If you are to stand beside me, you must understand the workings of the kingdom. These men, and they were all men, need to see that you are more than a pretty face that caught my attention. They need to see your intelligence, your courage, your worth." So she had dressed carefully in a gown of deep blue that the seamstress assured her was appropriate for court, and she had walked into the council chamber on Nikolai's arm, her head held high despite the nervous fluttering in her stomach. The 12 council members stood as they entered, bowing to the king, but Amara did not miss the way their eyes tracked to her, assessing and dismissing in the same glance. She was an Omega, and to many of them, that meant she was inherently lesser, incapable of understanding the complex matters of state. Nikolai guided her to a seat beside his own at the head of the table, a position that would traditionally be reserved for a queen or high-ranking noble. The statement was clear, and the council members' expressions ranged from shock to poorly concealed anger. "Gentlemen," Nikolai's voice was cool, carrying the weight of command. "Before we begin today's business, I wish to make something clear. Amara Bloodmoon sits at this table by my decree. She saved my life, and in doing so, proved herself more valuable than any number of guards or advisors who failed to see a threat standing in plain sight. Her counsel is welcome here, and any disrespect shown to her will be considered disrespect to me personally. Are we understood?" The council members murmured agreement, but Amara saw the resentment simmering beneath the surface. Lord Blackwood, a heavy-set man with a florid face, cleared his throat. "With all due respect, Your Majesty, while we are grateful for Miss Bloodmoon's service, matters of state require a certain, background and education that an Omega servant simply would not possess. Perhaps it would be more appropriate for her to wait outside while we discuss these sensitive issues." Nikolai's expression did not change, but the temperature in the room seemed to drop. "Lord Blackwood, I do not recall asking for your opinion on what is appropriate. Miss Bloodmoon will remain. If you find this arrangement difficult, you are welcome to tender your resignation from the council. I assure you, it will be accepted immediately." Blackwood's face reddened, but he subsided, though the look he shot Amara was pure venom. The meeting proceeded, and Amara listened carefully as the council members discussed trade agreements, border disputes, and reports from outlying territories. Much of it was complex, filled with references to precedent and tradition that she did not fully understand. But she noticed patterns, saw the way certain council members would speak over others, the way Dmitri would subtly guide discussions toward predetermined conclusions. Halfway through, they began discussing a petition from a village near the eastern border. The villagers claimed that their lord was imposing excessive taxes, leaving them unable to feed their families. Lord Blackwood dismissed the complaint immediately. Peasants always complain about taxes, Your Majesty. If we gave in to every petition, the kingdom's finances would collapse. The lord in question has always been loyal, and I see no reason to question his management of his own lands. Several council members nodded in agreement. Nikolai frowned, clearly considering the matter, and Amara felt something twist in her chest. She thought of her own childhood, of watching her parents struggle to pay what was owed, of the constant worry and hunger that had marked those years. Before she could think better of it, she spoke. "May I ask a question?" The room fell silent. 12 pairs of eyes turned to her, most expressing surprise that she dared to speak. Nikolai's expression, however, was encouraging. "Of course." Amara looked at Lord Blackwood directly. "You say the Lord has always been loyal. But loyal to whom? To the king, or to his own purse? And if the villagers are truly suffering, if children are going hungry because their parents cannot afford both food and taxes, then is that not a failure of leadership? A lord's duty is to care for his people, not to bleed them dry." Blackwood's face purpled with rage. "You dare to lecture me on the duties of nobility? You are an Omega who spent her life carrying trays and scrubbing floors. What could you possibly know about the complexities of governance?" Amara felt heat rise in her cheeks, but refused to look away. "I know what it is to be hungry, my lord. I know what it is to watch my parents make impossible choices between paying what was owed and feeding their child. I know the face of suffering because I have lived it. And I know that a kingdom is only as strong as its people, that if we allow the weak to be crushed beneath the weight of the strong, we build our throne on sand." The silence that followed was absolute. Amara's heart hammered in her chest, and she waited for Nikolai to rebuke her, to tell her she had overstepped. Instead, he leaned back in his chair, a slight smile playing at his lips. "Well said." His voice carried approval. "Dmitri, I want a full investigation into this lord's taxes. If the villager's claims have merit, he will be removed from his position and replaced with someone who understands that leadership is service, not exploitation." "But, Your Majesty," Blackwood protested, "this sets a dangerous precedent. If the common folk believe they can petition the king every time they dislike their lord's decisions, then perhaps their lords should make better decisions." Nikolai's voice went cold. "I am not interested in protecting corrupt nobles, Blackwood. My duty is to the kingdom as a whole, not to the comfort of those who abuse their power. The investigation will proceed, and that is final." Blackwood subsided, his expression murderous. The meeting continued, but Amara felt the weight of hostile stares, felt the shift in the room's atmosphere. She had made enemies today, powerful enemies who would not forget or forgive her interference. When the meeting finally ended and the council members filed out, Lord Blackwood paused by her chair, leaning close enough that only she could hear. "You have made a grave mistake, Omega. The king may protect you now, but his attention will eventually wander, and when it does, you will find that those you have offended have very long memories." He swept from the room before she could respond. Amara sat frozen, his words echoing in her mind. Then Nikolai was there, pulling her to her feet and into his arms. "You were magnificent." His voice was warm with pride. "The way you stood up to Blackwood, the way you spoke truth to power. You belong here, Amara. Do not let their small-mindedness make you doubt that." "But he threatened me." Her voice came out small. "He said that when your attention wanders, my attention will not wander." Nikolai interrupted fiercely. He pulled back to look down at her, his hands framing her face. "You are not a passing fancy, Amara. You are not a momentary distraction. You are the woman who saw me when I was invisible, who understood my loneliness because you carried your own. You are the one I choose, today, and every day hereafter." He pressed his forehead to hers, his voice dropping to a whisper. "I love you. I know it is too soon. I know I should wait, should court you properly, but I have spent my life denying myself, and I will not deny this. I love you, Amara Bloodmoon, and I will love you until the moon falls from the sky." Amara felt tears slip down her cheeks, felt her heart expand until she thought it might burst from her chest. "I love you too." The words felt like magic, like a key turning in a lock. "I think I have loved you since the first moment I saw you, though I did not have the words for it then. I love your strength and your gentleness, your fierceness, and your vulnerability. I love the man you are when the crown is set aside, and I love the king you have become despite the weight of it." Nikolai kissed her then, deep and claiming, and Amara surrendered to it, to him, to the impossible, beautiful truth of what they had found together. The weeks that followed were a study in contrasts. Within the private spaces they carved out for themselves, Amara and Nikolai built a relationship that was tender and passionate by turns. He courted her with a devotion that took her breath away, filling her chambers with flowers from the gardens, taking her on moonlit walks through the palace grounds, teaching her to dance in the privacy of his rooms with no audience but the stars. In those moments, he was not the Lycan king. He was simply Nikolai, a man who laughed at her jokes and listened to her dreams and held her as if she were made of precious things. He was gentle with her always, respectful of boundaries, never pushing for more than she was ready to give. But there was heat between them, a growing desire that made the air crackle whenever they were close. But outside those private moments, they faced constant opposition. The council members who resented her presence began to work against her subtly, finding ways to exclude her from meetings or dismiss her suggestions. The noble ladies spread rumors that grew more creative and vicious by the day. Some whispered that she had used Omega wiles to ensnare the king, that she had orchestrated the assassination attempt herself to make herself look heroic. The gossip hurt, but Amara had weathered worse. What troubled her more was the way it affected Nikolai. She watched him grow increasingly tense, saw the way his jaw would tighten when he overheard particularly cruel remarks. The king, who had been learning to shed his fearsome reputation, was being forced to don it again, not to control his kingdom, but to protect her. It came to a head during a formal dinner 3 weeks after the ball. Amara had been seated beside Nikolai, a place of honor that made several noble ladies bristle with barely concealed envy. Across the table, Lady Ravencroft, wife of the traitorous lord who had sent the assassin, watched Amara with cold calculation. Midway through the meal, Lady Ravencroft spoke, her voice carrying clearly through the conversation. "Tell me, Miss Bloodmoon, how does one make the transition from carrying trays to sitting at the king's right hand? It must have been quite sudden, quite unexpected." The implication was clear. The table fell silent, nobles turning to watch how Amara would respond. Nikolai's hand found hers under the table, squeezing gently, offering support, but leaving the response to her. Amara met Lady Ravencroft's gaze steadily. "The transition came through being observant, my lady, through caring more about the king's life than my own comfort. Perhaps if more people at that ball had been focused on protecting their king rather than advancing their own social standing, the assassin your husband sent would never have gotten so close." Lady Ravencroft's face went white, then red. The nobles around them gasped, shocked by Amara's directness. But she was not finished. "As for how I make the transition, I do so by remembering that titles and stations are merely words. What matters is character, courage, and loyalty. Your husband had a title, a station, all the trappings of nobility. Yet he proved himself a traitor and a coward, willing to murder his king for power. I was a servant, yes, but I would die before I betrayed the man I serve. So perhaps the question, Lady Ravencroft, is not how I made my transition, but how you can sit at this table after your husband's treachery, benefiting from mercy you did not earn, and certainly do not appreciate. The silence that followed was deafening. Lady Ravencroft stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "I will not be insulted by an Omega whore who—" "Enough." Nikolai's voice cracked through the room like a whip. He stood slowly, and Amara felt power radiate from him, felt the presence that had made armies tremble. His eyes had changed, glowing with that inner light that spoke of the beast within. "You will apologize to Amara, Lady Ravencroft. You will apologize now, and then you will leave this palace and never return. Your family's lands are forfeit, seized by the crown for your husband's treason. The only reason you still live is because I have been merciful. But that mercy has limits, and you have just found them." Lady Ravencroft paled, realizing she had pushed too far. She opened her mouth, perhaps to apologize, but Nikolai raised a hand. "Actually, I have changed my mind. Do not apologize. Leave now, before I forget that I am trying to be a better king, and remember only that I am an excellent predator. You have until sunrise to be gone from my kingdom. If you are found within my borders after that, you will be tried for conspiracy in your husband's treason. And I promise you, that trial will not end well for you." Guards materialized from the shadows, flanking Lady Ravencroft and escorting her from the dining hall. The remaining nobles watched in stunned silence as the doors closed behind her. Then Nikolai turned to address the room at large, his voice carrying to every corner. "Let me make something absolutely clear to all of you. Amara Bloodmoon is under my protection. She is not a servant, not a temporary amusement, not a phase I am going through. She is the woman I have chosen, and she will be treated with the respect and honor that position demands. Anyone who cannot accept this is welcome to leave. My doors are open, and I will not stop you." He paused, letting the words sink in. "But know this. If you stay, if you remain in my court, and under my protection, then you will treat her as you would treat me. Any insult to her is an insult to me. Any threat against her is a threat against me. And I think you all know by now what happens to those who threaten me." The transformation was complete. The gentle lover had vanished, replaced by the Lichen King in all his fearsome glory. Nobles around the table bowed their heads in submission, and Amara felt the power of the moment, the way Nikolai had just reshaped the social hierarchy with nothing but his will and his words. When the dinner finally ended and they returned to their private chambers, Nikolai pulled her into his arms immediately, his hands shaking slightly as they moved over her back. "I am sorry." His voice was rough. "I am sorry you had to endure that. Sorry that my world is so full of vipers who would strike at you to wound me." Amara pulled back to look up at him, seeing the conflict in his eyes. "Do not apologize for being who you are. What you did tonight, standing up for me, defending me before the entire court, that was not the action of a tyrant or a beast. That was the action of a man protecting what he loves." She reached up to cup his face, forcing him to meet her eyes. "I am not afraid of them, Nikolai. I am not fragile, and I will not shatter because someone says cruel things. What I am afraid of is you losing yourself trying to protect me. You have worked so hard to become more than the fearsome king, to show compassion and gentleness. Do not let their hatred force you back into that armor. But when I heard her call you that, when I saw the disrespect in her eyes," his jaw clenched. "Something in me broke, Amara. The beast wanted out. I wanted to tear her apart for daring to speak to you that way. Then I am grateful you restrained yourself," she said gently. "What you did was perfect. You defended me without becoming the monster they want you to be. You showed them that there are consequences for cruelty, but you did not lose control. That took strength, Nikolai. More strength than violence would have required." He pulled her close again, burying his face in her hair. "I do not know what I did to deserve you. You make me want to be better, to be worthy of the faith you place in me. You already are," Amara whispered. "You are exactly who you need to be. Fierce when the situation demands it, gentle when you can afford to be. That balance is what makes you a great king, and it is what makes me love you." They stood together in the firelight, holding each other, drawing strength from their connection. And slowly, Amara felt Nikolai relax, felt the tension drain from his muscles as her presence soothed the beast within. That night, they crossed a threshold. There was no dramatic declaration, no sudden decision. It simply felt right, natural, inevitable. When Nikolai kissed her, Amara kissed him back with a passion that had been building for weeks. When he lifted her into his arms and carried her to his bed, she went willingly, eagerly, ready to give herself completely to the man who had seen her, chosen her, loved her. Their lovemaking was tender and fierce by turns, Nikolai worshipping her body with a reverence that brought tears to her eyes, Amara giving herself over to sensation and emotion, and the overwhelming rightness of their union. When they finally lay spent and tangled together, she felt complete in a way she had never experienced before. Nikolai's hand moved lazily through her hair, his voice drowsy and content. "Mine," he murmured. "You are mine, and I am yours, and nothing in this world will ever change that." Amara pressed a kiss to his chest, right over his heart. "Forever," she agreed. "No matter what comes, we face it together." But forever, as it turned out, was about to be tested in ways neither of them anticipated. The challenge came from an unexpected quarter. Lord Thornwood, one of the oldest and most influential nobles in the kingdom, requested an audience with the king. Nikolai granted it, and Amara stood beside his throne as the elderly lord entered the throne room, his face grave. "Your Majesty," Thornwood bowed respectfully, "I come before you today not as an enemy, but as a concerned advisor who has served your father and grandfather before you. I bring news that cannot be ignored." "Speak." Nikolai's voice was neutral, but Amara felt the tension in him. "There is growing unrest among the noble houses. Your relationship with Miss Bloodmoon, while certainly your prerogative, has created instability. There are those who question your judgment, who wonder if perhaps you have been unduly influenced." Nikolai's eyes flashed, but Thornwood raised a hand. "Please, let me finish. I do not share these concerns, but I cannot deny their existence. And there is precedent, ancient law that states the king must take a maid of suitable station to produce heirs and ensure the stability of the kingdom. The council is prepared to invoke that law and demand that you either elevate Miss Bloodmoon formally through a bonding ceremony or set her aside and choose a proper mate from among the noble houses." The words hung in the air like a knife. Amara felt her heart stop, felt the world tilt beneath her feet. A bonding ceremony was not a simple marriage. It was a permanent magical connection between lichens, one that could not be undone. It was a public declaration that superseded all other bonds, a claiming recognized by both law and magic, and Nikolai had never mentioned it. In all their conversations, all their plans, he had never spoken of making her his mate formally. Lord Thornwood continued, his voice gentle but implacable. "The council will meet in 3 days to put this matter to a vote. If you wish to keep Miss Bloodmoon, you must bond with her publicly, before the court and kingdom. If you choose not to, they will demand you release her and choose a suitable mate from the list they have prepared." Thornwood bowed again and retreated, leaving them alone in the throne room. Nikolai sat frozen on his throne, his face unreadable. Amara stood beside him, her hands clasped tightly to keep them from shaking. Finally, he spoke. "Amara." The way he said her name, soft and pained, told her everything she needed to know. He had not expected this, had not prepared for it, and now he was being forced to make a choice he was not ready to make. She found her voice, though it trembled. "You do not have to decide now. You need time to think, to consider what is best for the kingdom." Nikolai stood abruptly, descending from his throne to take her hands in his. "Do not do that. Do not make this about the kingdom. This is about us, Amara. About what we want, what we choose." "But is it?" she asked quietly. "You are the king, Nikolai. Your choices affect thousands of people. If bonding with me creates instability, if it gives your enemies ammunition to use against you, then perhaps—" "No." His voice was fierce. "Do not finish that sentence. Do not even think it." But the seed of doubt had been planted. That night, lying in his arms, Amara stared at the ceiling, and wondered if loving him meant letting him go. If the greatest act of love would be to step aside, to allow him to choose a mate who could give him the political stability he needed. The next 2 days were tense. Nikolai tried to discuss the bonding ceremony with her, but Amara kept deflecting, kept turning the conversation to other things. She could see the frustration in his eyes, the hurt that she was pulling away, but she could not stop herself. On the morning of the 3rd day, the day the council would vote, Amara made her decision. She waited until Nikolai left for an early meeting. Then she packed her few belongings into a small bag. She wrote him a letter, her tears falling onto the parchment and smudging the ink. "My love, by the time you read this, I will be gone. Please do not try to find me. I am not running because I do not love you. I am running because I love you too much to be the weakness your enemies exploit, the crack in your armor that they will use to destroy you. You told me once that you wanted to follow your heart rather than your duty. But you are the Lycan King, and duty is not something you can set aside, no matter how much we might wish otherwise. Your people need you to be strong, to be above reproach. They need you to make choices that secure the kingdom's future, not choices that satisfy your heart. I will never regret our time together. You showed me what it meant to be seen, to be valued, to be loved. You gave me more in these few weeks than I ever dreamed of having in a lifetime. But now, I must give you something in return. I must give you your freedom. Choose a mate who can stand beside you without causing controversy. Choose someone who can give you heirs and alliances and all the things a king needs. Choose duty over desire, as you have always done, and know that somewhere in the world, I will be thinking of you and loving you, and wishing you every happiness. Stay safe, my fierce king. Stay strong, and please forgive me. Forever yours, Amara." She left the letter on his pillow and slipped from the palace before dawn, using the servants' passages she had navigated for years. Her heart was breaking, but she forced herself to keep moving, to not look back. She made it to the edge of the city before she heard the howl. It was a sound of pure anguish, rage, and grief, combined into something that made her soul ache. She knew that voice, knew it was Nikolai, transformed and hunting. For her, Amara ran, not to escape, but to give him time to calm down, to think clearly. She could not let him find her like this, could not let him make an impulsive choice in the heat of emotion. But Nikolai Stormborn was not just any predator. He was the Lycan King, and when he hunted, nothing escaped him. She made it perhaps a mile into the forest beyond the city before he appeared, stepping from the shadows in his hybrid form. He was massive, towering over her, black fur covering powerful muscles, eyes glowing with that inner light. He should have been terrifying, but all Amara felt was grief. "Go back," she whispered. "Please, Nikolai, let me go." He shifted, the transformation flowing over him like water, until he stood before her as a man again. His face was wet with tears, his expression absolutely shattered. "Let you go?" His voice broke. "You ask me to let you go, as if you are not my heart, my soul, the only thing in this world that has ever made me feel whole." He crossed the distance between them in 2 strides, pulling her against him with desperate strength. "Did you think I would not notice you were gone? Did you think I would simply accept your absence and move on? Amara, I felt the moment you left the palace, felt it like a blade to the chest. I have searched for you for hours, terrified that I had lost you forever. I am trying to protect you." She sobbed into his chest. "The council, the nobles, they will destroy you if you choose me. I cannot be the reason you lose everything you have built." Nikolai pulled back, his hands framing her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. "Listen to me very carefully. Without you, I have nothing. The throne means nothing if I cannot share it with you. The kingdom means nothing if you are not beside me. Power, authority, legacy, none of it matters if I am alone." He pressed his forehead to hers, his tears mixing with hers. "You saved my life that night at the ball. But you did something far more important. You saved my soul. You reminded me what it means to live rather than simply exist. And if loving you costs me the throne, if choosing you means losing the crown, then I will pay that price gladly. But your people will have a king who understands that true strength comes from loving something more than power. A king who knows that some things are worth more than duty or tradition or political expediency. Amara, I am going to bond with you. Today, in front of the council, in front of the entire court. And if they cannot accept that, then I will walk away from it all. We will build a new life somewhere else, just the two of us, and I will be content. You do not mean that. Her voice was anguished. You are the Lycan king. You were born to rule. I was born alone and cold, raised to be a weapon rather than a man. He countered. You taught me to be more than that. You showed me that I could be gentle without being weak, that I could love without losing myself. I will not go back to what I was before you, Amara. I cannot. He kissed her then, deep and desperate, pouring all his love and fear and determination into that contact. And Amara felt her resolve crumble, felt the truth settle into her bones. Running had been a mistake. Their strength was not in facing the world alone, but in facing it together. When they finally broke apart, she whispered against his lips, Take me home and bond with me, and we will face whatever comes together. Nikolai's smile was radiant despite his tears. He swept her into his arms, carrying her as if she weighed nothing, and began the journey back to the palace. As they walked, Amara felt something shift in the air, a rightness that resonated deep in her bones. This was her destiny. This man, this impossible love, this terrifying leap into the unknown. They were meant for this. The council chamber was packed when they arrived. Nobles lined the walls. Council members sat at their table. And at the center of it all, the bonding circle had been prepared. Ancient symbols drawn in silver on the marble floor. Dmitri stood near the throne, his expression carefully neutral, while Lord Thornwood waited by the circle, ready to perform the ceremony. Nikolai strode into the room with Amara at his side, and the murmuring fell silent. He had not changed from his hunt, his shirt still torn, his hair wild around his face. He looked every inch the fierce king, the predator who would tolerate no challenge. He spoke, his voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. You demanded that I make a choice. Very well. I choose Amara Bloodmoon. I choose her not because she is convenient, not because she brings alliances or wealth or political advantage. I choose her because she is brave and kind and strong. I choose her because she sees me as I truly am and loves me anyway. I choose her because a life without her is no life at all. He turned to face the council, his eyes blazing. If any among you cannot accept this, leave now. I will not force you to witness something you oppose. But know this. If you stay, if you bear witness to this bonding, then you accept Amara as my mate, my queen in all but name. You swear to protect her as you would protect me, to honor her as you would honor me. There will be no more whispers, no more challenges, no more attempts to undermine or remove her. This is your one chance to leave. After this moment, there is no going back. The silence stretched taut. Amara held her breath, waiting to see who would leave, who would reject this declaration. Several nobles shifted uncomfortably, exchanging glances. Then slowly, one by one, they bowed their heads in acceptance. Even Lord Blackwood, his face tight with suppressed anger, bowed. Even Dmitri, who had counseled caution, stepped forward and knelt. We bear witness, Your Majesty, Dmitri said formally, and we accept your choice. Nikolai's hand tightened on hers, and she felt the emotion roll through him. Relief, gratitude, fierce protective joy. Then let us begin. Lord Thornwood gestured for them to enter the bonding circle. Amara stepped forward, her heart racing, her hand clasped tightly in Nikolai's. The symbols began to glow as they crossed the threshold, ancient magic responding to their presence. Thornwood's voice rang out, formal and ceremonial. Before witnesses and under the light of the moon, We gather to bond two souls. Nikolai Stormborn, Lycan King. Do you freely choose this woman as your mate, your partner, your equal in all things? I do. Nikolai's voice was steady, certain. She is my choice, my heart, my home. I claim her and am claimed by her. From this moment until the stars fall from the sky. Amara Bloodmoon, do you freely accept this bond? Do you choose this man as your mate, to stand beside him in joy and sorrow, in darkness and light? Amara met Nikolai's eyes and saw her own feelings reflected back at her. Love and hope and determination and fierce, unshakable commitment. I do. Her voice rang clear through the chamber. He is my choice, my heart, my home. I claim him and am claimed by him, from this moment until the end of all things. Then by the power vested in me and by the ancient laws of our people, I declare this bond sealed. Thornwood raised his hands, and magic flooded the circle. Amara felt it flow through her, felt the connection snap into place between her and Nikolai, a golden thread that bound their souls together. She felt his love, his fierce protectiveness, his utter devotion, and she knew he felt hers in return. The magic settled, and the symbols on the floor blazed bright before fading. Nikolai pulled her into his arms and kissed her, and the chamber erupted in cheers. Even those who had opposed her could not deny the power of what they had just witnessed. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Nikolai rested his forehead against hers. Mine, he whispered. Finally, irrevocably, eternally mine. And you are mine, she whispered back. My fierce king, my gentle lover, my partner in all things. They left the chamber hand in hand, and as they walked through the palace corridors, Amara felt the difference. The stares were not hostile now, but respectful. The whispers were not cruel, but awed. She was no longer an Omega servant who had caught the king's eye. She was the king's bonded mate, his chosen queen, and that changed everything. That night, they celebrated privately in their chambers. Nikolai was tender and passionate by turns, showing her with his body what his words had already declared. And Amara gave herself over completely, holding nothing back, secure in the knowledge that they were bound now in a way that transcended law or custom or political expedience. In the weeks and months that followed, Amara settled into her new role. She attended council meetings and offered opinions that were now listened to with respect. She worked with Dimitri to implement reforms that protected Omegas and other vulnerable populations. She walked through the palace and gardens freely, no longer invisible, no longer dismissed. But more importantly, she and Nikolai built a life together. They had mornings where he would wake her with gentle kisses, evenings where they would sit before the fire and simply talk. They had moments of playfulness and passion, of serious discussion and comfortable silence. They learned each other's rhythms and moods, learned to communicate without words, learned to be partners in the truest sense. And gradually, the kingdom learned to love her too. Stories spread of the Omega who had saved the king, who had proven that courage had nothing to do with station. Young Omegas looked at her and saw possibility, saw that perhaps they too could be more than they had been told. The common people, who had always borne the burden of noble cruelty, found in her a voice and an advocate. Nikolai, for his part, became the king he had always been meant to be. Still fierce when circumstances demanded, still fearsome to his enemies, but tempered now by compassion and wisdom. The council learned that his gentleness was not weakness, that he could be both tender and terrible, both loving and lethal. A year after the ball, Amara stood on a balcony overlooking the palace gardens, her hand resting on the slight swell of her belly. The healers had confirmed it that morning. She was carrying Nikolai's child, the heir to the Stormborn throne. She felt him before she heard him, the bond between them singing with his approach. His arms came around her from behind, his hand covering hers on her belly, his chin resting on her shoulder. "Are you happy, little moon?" She turned in his arms, looking up into the face she had come to know so well, the face she loved more than her own life. "I am more than happy. I am complete. You gave me everything I never dared to dream of. A home, a purpose, a love that defies description." Nikolai's smile was soft, his eyes warm. "You gave me the same. You took a king who was slowly turning to stone and reminded him how to feel, how to love, how to live. You saved me in every way a person can be saved." He kissed her gently, then knelt and pressed a kiss to her belly. "And now we will have a child who will know from the beginning that they are loved, that they are valued, that their worth has nothing to do with their station or power or abilities. We will raise them to be strong and kind, fierce and gentle, just like their father," Amara whispered, running her fingers through his long black hair. "Just like their mother," he corrected, looking up at her with eyes full of devotion. They stood together on the balcony as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold and deep purple, and Amara thought back to that night at the ball, to the moment when she had felt danger vibrating through the air, to the choice she had made to act rather than stay quiet. That single choice had changed everything, had transformed her from invisible servant to beloved mate, had given a lonely king someone to share his burden, had proven that courage and love could overcome any obstacle. She had stayed quiet when others were loud, had acted when others were frozen, had loved when others would have played it safe, and in doing so, she had found her destiny. Nikolai's arms tightened around her, and she felt the bond between them pulse with warmth and love and unshakable commitment. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Whatever joys awaited, they would share them fully. They were partners, equals, two souls bound by choice and love and the moon's own magic. The Lycan King and his Omega Queen, fierce and gentle, powerful and compassionate, forever intertwined. And it had all begun with a whispered warning in a crowded ballroom, with an Omega servant who had sensed danger and refused to stay quiet. Sometimes the greatest love stories begin not with grand gestures, but with small acts of courage. Sometimes the most powerful bonds are forged not between those who are alike, but between those who see past differences to recognize kindred souls. Amara had been invisible for so long that she had forgotten what it felt like to be seen. Nikolai had been feared for so long that he had forgotten what it felt like to be loved. Together, they had found what each had been searching for, had become more than the sum of their parts. And as the stars began to emerge in the darkening sky, Amara whispered a prayer of gratitude to the moon that had guided her path, that had brought her to this moment, to this man, to this impossible, beautiful life. Stay quiet, the world had told her. But she had chosen to act instead, and in that choice, she had found everything. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this beautiful love story. Let us know what you thought of this tale full of emotions and surprises. Tell us your name, where you're watching from, and rate this story from 0 to 10 if it touched your heart. And if you enjoyed the plot, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the amazing new stories coming soon. See you next time.